Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to the stream. Let's crack like everyone's Tuesday. How was work? How was school? That's what you did. We'll chuck a quick raffle and chat for you guys. Quick AO to Jazz, Zeke, and everyone else in chat. You guys are doing alright. Make sure you guys use next week so we join you into that raffle. We're back on Bernard. Gonna do a bit of cop role play. I've been getting harassed in the police channels. Yeah, my game day was pretty good too. So I need to show up, but get off recruit. Victoria's always recruit. You could probably get a promotion. But yeah, my day was pretty good. Been pretty chill. Just doing a bit of editing today, trying to get some shorts done. Maybe on a YouTube video, and that was pretty much most of the day. It was just like doing the content management stuff. But without much further ado, let's go to the game screen. Let's try and see if we can find our partner and get into some policing as Bernard. Hey, Thomas, what's cracking? Now, I don't know where my unit actually is. He said something about going to the bank, but I don't see him around. Shots fired reported. 7 minutes office in duress. Completed. Any active? What was it? Was it 411? Are we 411? Oh, how you doing, Thomas? Doing good. Finally home for vacation. How was it? How was going away? Was it to the Netherlands, right? Or was it from the Netherlands? Like, somewhere in Europe. There he is here. Sweet. I don't have to call him.
Recruit Bernard.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh. Hello, Mr.
That's
Whittaker.
all good, mate.
Hey, hello.
Sergeant Jacksonoff.
Oh, now that you pose like that for photos.
Well,
I just didn't have a photo yet.
That's where you only just made
You get a bit of sunburn.
yeah, but you pave us under the desk with the commander, and get you up real quick. Gets him up real quick too.
Yeah.
That's a bit of an under the table interaction, isn't it, illegal as an officer?
So I was gonna. What? Huh? No.
Yeah, under the table.
$20 at the end of the day, man.
No. So when I say under the table action, it's me under the table while he's doing paperwork. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Oh, my old wife Janice hasn't done that to me in 30 years.
Well, does it still
No.
work? Oh, okay.
No, not since the Vietnam War.
Oh,
You can get
yeah.
needles and pills for that, right?
Yeah, I'm staying human. No one's touching me down there. That's what makes me. But what was I saying?
I don't know what you're saying.
Oh yeah, what's the go with? Sorry, I missed. Wasn't around for a roll call. Was last night. Interceptor. Are we looking into that? What's going on there?
You missed out.
I missed out.
Yeah, after roll call, we did some interceptor trials.
Oh, okay. All right. Can we? Is it happening again?
I assume it will be at some point. I don't know, to be honest. As the fresh sergeant who was only promoted last night, I don't know what's happening there. I'll ask for you though, and see what the go is, because I'm sure it won't just be a one and done, obviously.
Yep.
And but I don't know
also,
the process there.
I know I had to wait 2 weeks before I could apply back for my cert. Cert, I should say. It's been over 2 weeks now, so I'd obviously like to get that organised. Also.
Yep. Again, I'll look into that one.
Yep.
Nice,
sure
Thomas. And the 50k chips, man. I can't believe you got sunburnt, bro. How do you get sunburnt in Northern Europe?
Yeah, so I
get absolutely cooked by the sun, but I only go red for one day, and the next day I go a little tan. I'm pretty lucky.
Yep. Sweet as. All right. Sounds good.
Just gonna go grab some plates. I'll be a few minutes.
Okay,
right.
Right, so if we remember from the last stream chat, old Bernie doesn't run anymore. He's been done dirty by the running, so, we have to use the elevator, walk around. Now, I think it was upstairs to go buy stuff. I was trying to find it. I flew in before stream started, just a little bit. So I could, try and figure out what the go is. Is this the spot we want to go? I think it's there. Old man Bernie. The top of a mountain, took a long break, and they put a bloody bench in the middle of the sun, not in the shadow. Oh, dude, it'd be a nice spot to sit, though, doing a mountain walk and sitting in the sun. I love sitting in the sun, but I can see how you've been done dirty. Been done a disservice by the public planning. Well, I hope you had a good holiday though. I was missing you in stream. I do remember you said you had a holiday there. We've been chilling, doing a lot of bikey stuff on Julio Marcus. Look at that, I'm still stuck in the old days there, chat. Grab 3. 3 should be enough. They don't stack, so I don't really want to have too many on me. I need to get some food. Now I'm gonna run this probably the same as I run what's it called? Run like my character in Crim, so I don't get too confused. And that way I can just fucking switch things up into places. Well, like 20k steps, that's good effort, bro. That's a real good effort, man. Yeah, I'm assuming you have some pictures from your little holiday, mate. If you feel free with sharing, make sure you chuck them into the photos channel on my Discord. I'd love to see. Always love seeing different things of different places. You know, being an Aussie, it's got to be real different to what it is here. Especially like architecture. Sound real nerdy for a second, but like because like the age of our country is like 150 years, really, like 200 years at most, with like architecture especially. And like the US is even better for a couple of 100 years. You can like actually find old buildings and old shit. But like Europe is where it's at, obviously, for that. Oh, we've rained a tiny bit. No one's seen that, right, chat? All right. Oh, thank God that elevator's there.
Yeah. You know what? We might go out on a highway here today. What do you reckon? How's that sound?
Yeah, I've got a pacemaker, so it should be alright.
Yeah,
right.
watch it. Don't excite him too much.
Oh, I think you'll be
Is that a threat?
I think you'll be right.
Oh, is that a threat? Oh, well, don't threaten me for good time.
Yeah, fair enough.
And we went to switch on the visitors. They're almost 200 years apart.
Highway's best.
Oh, do I have to get changed, do I?
Well, I definitely will. I don't know about you.
I think I should stay in the recruit vest for your whole visibility, you know?
Well, I agree. I don't think we
No,
have a
highway vest, but he's already wearing a high vis vest, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, so we should be fine just to wear the recruit vest and all.
Yeah, right. Well, so your relatives, were they 200 years old, mate? Is that what you're trying to say here? 200 years apart? I'd be concerned, mate. Are you a vampire or something? Ooh, look at me, I'm wiggling. Oh, go. Is it a bit busy around these parts, mate?
Sorry, mate, I missed that.
It's a bit busy around these parts, mate. It was a bit quiet.
Oh, mate, look, I'll be honest. I don't really come to work very often. I like to have my days off. You know.
You're like Harvey Norman, are you, mate?
Yeah, pretty much, mate. Pretty much. I just show up when I feel like it.
0 hours, 0 interest.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. There we go. How's that look? What the fuck are those glasses? Hang on.
Hey, you look classy.
Nah. Not that one.
Oh, thanks to the lurk, Chaz. Enjoy putting little man to bed. Enjoy putting little man to
There
bed.
we go.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Thanks, mate.
Right.
Alright. You got everything on you? You got your cups, you got your gun, you got all your bits and pieces?
Cups I think I've got to buy, mate.
Nah, you should have them on you. As long as you're on duty, they'll be in.
Oh, yeah. Yep, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Buddy, yeah, so what we gonna be doing? Some road patrols, or we gonna be,
Yeah, I might show you how to use the highway car, mate. We'll,
He says good night while I say good night.
run down.
I love you, buddy.
Yeah, plate reader works and all that stuff.
Alright.
Yeah. It's a nice little feature in there for you.
A speed radar.
Yeah, on speed radar, plate reader, it's all on there.
I'll have to buy my own car eventually, right? That's what the main aim will be. Alright. See him get his car out. We'll see what it is.
What do we got here? We'll do the Sentinel.
Actually, I've not driven any of these cars. Not yet. So, I don't know how good or bad these things are. I don't know if I'll be driving a car on my second shift as a recruit, especially not a highway.
should have just gave you some keys now.
Yeah, mate.
You'll have to confirm which muscle it is to turn it on, but you should be able to turn the Wraith ARS unit on by flexing F5.
I definitely would have. We need to have a look through your muscles here.
Yeah.
I definitely would have changed this. Rockstar key bindings, because I've done this all before. Old Wraith, was it? I have it all set up on the hotkeys.
The plates on you, because I always forget.
Oh, mine's on Y.
Yeah, I've got a couple on there anyway. Yep.
Oh, look at this! It's all set up for my old thing. I've got the money.
No, so it's just me that's an idiot. Got it.
I've got this all up.
Mate, I didn't say that.
Make the small.
Yeah, mate, so you've got that little controller showing up?
Yeah, mate, just making sure it's not too bloody big boys.
Yeah, yep.
Alright, top left. Do we make the stop right? Top right. Top right it is. Alright, and then we go... Right, yeah, I want to...
You'll see the power button on the actual unit there. Make sure you press that on. Yep.
Yeah, mate, yep.
Alright, now press the XMT button on both upper and lower. Yep. Now press on the upper unit, press same. Yeah, and on the lower unit, press opposite.
Alright, that's the antennas, isn't it?
Yeah, that'll be your speed trap. And then on the plate reader side of it, you'll see you'll be able to just press plate reader on that little controller.
These are fucking huge.
And that'll pop the plate reader up.
Alright. Yeah, I've got a plate reader up now, beauty. Now, there's a way you can lock this thing, can't you?
Yeah, mine's set up to my F1 and F2 muscles. I think. Or is it F3? I can't remember now, to be honest.
Yep.
I think it's F1, F2.
Yeah, my speed is 150. I've got it on for lock.
Yep, that's fine.
Right, sweet. Now we get this up. So that's it done. It's actually been ages since I've done this,
Make
check.
sure your seatbelt's on, mate.
I'll get this down on my eye. There you go. Right, beauty. Now I'm going to try and figure out what my lock-on muscles are.
Your what muscles are, sorry?
My lock-on ones to bloody get the plate locked on.
Oh, yeah, yep. Looks like it's, you might have accidentally turned that off on file. Right,
so my front antenna is num 8 muscle, num 9 for front plate. Alright, if I can remember this for me, please. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
And then rear is 4 num pad and 6 is plate. Alright. Oh, yes.
Ignore that.
Oh, is that another one pop up?
Yeah, that was you again.
What have I got set to that? Oh my god. Which one was that? Was that the distress?
That was your duress.
Duress, yep, alright. Back, I'll just get rid of that of the MDT.
Yeah, you're right.
Right, now have I set that manually, or is that fucking... Let me find this.
You want to, once you've done that, unlock your speed there.
Well, what is it? What do I have?
Alright,
The duress.
first traffic stop.
What do I have as duress, chat?
Pull it over, mate.
Oh my god. It was 9, right? On my numpad. I wish you could just unbind it from somewhere else.
Fuck.
Oh. But...
They just disappeared.
Oh, you got shots fired anyway. Let's go to that.
Yeah, you might as well put us onto that one. You want to do that? Yeah. Now set the... Yeah, perfect.
What's the code?
We'll be on 411 en route to the
130 is
latest.
going to be priority 1 to latest.
Yep, just do that.
411 will be priority 1 to latest. Yes, that one. Sorry, but I'm getting a bit old, mate. The slingo with the slangs is not amazing.
That's alright, mate.
Oh, it gives me time to figure this out. 5M. Surely it's one of these ones I've got set up, or I set up a keybind. So I can see my manual keybinds I've got set up through F8, right?
Alright, make sure you get your gun out in your hands already.
Alright. Yeah, easy done, mate. I'm just trying to see if I can find if I've got duress keyboard somewhere. I think it's one of those ones where I've done it manually like a spoon.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I wonder what this is.
Oh, Jesus Christ, are you kidding me?
Ignore that. My recruit's figuring out some muscle.
The fuck was that one? Was that another duress?
That was officer location, not address.
Fuck me. Oh my god. Oh.
411 arriving on scene.
Alright, I'm just gonna leave it alone.
Quick look around. I can't see any POIs or BOIs at this stage.
Jesus Christ, I'm so sorry, chat.
If someone was up here hunting, might be worth trying to flashlight around. Alright, put the gun away there, Bernard.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get your flashlight out, mate.
Oh, I don't have one of those.
Ah, that's not good. We'll have to get you on.
Got a camera.
If I find bullets, I'll let you know.
It's gonna take a moment to figure out these keybinds. Where is it? Is it like up here? What is it? Oh, I have to Google this, chat. Mail theft. I don't know if we're attending that. What is it? What do I do? Where is it? Just where is it? Where do you actually find the thing where you can like change your keybinds? Bruh. Console commands. There you go. Find. There you go.
Bernard, you want to come down here?
Hey, Ferb. I just ran. Habit. We got some evidence, do we?
We did. We found some shell casings. What I'll do, mate, I'll pass them to you. I'll get you to have a bit of a look at them, see if we can figure out who they belong to. A bit of a look onto them, mate. See if you can get a serial number or anything off them.
Oh yeah, I got a serial number here, I think. Yeah, mate, we give us a bit of a hit in the MDT.
Mm-hmm.
Profiles. What was it? Weapons database, boom. .gov. Yeah, it's not recorded in our database.
Yeah.
when you get back in your car. Bloody market. Truce.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
make sure to do that.
It doesn't come up with anything.
Right. Okay. Well, that would usually mean that it's a probably an illegal firearm,
Unregistered.
unregistered. Yes. What might do? So it's just not coming up at all.
Yeah, nothing at all.
Uh-huh. All right. I guess throw that into. Have you made a report for this, Peter?
No.
No. All
I
right.
thought it was good training for your recruit. And
I agree.
Below
I
my
don't-
pay grade.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I'm kidding.
I'm going to sacrifice this tribute here, will I?
Yeah.
Yes,
mate,
you know,
you
you've got to learn some point.
Learn what, mate?
Yeah, to write a report, it's thrilling.
Oh,
Enthralling?
I only report people on the left. I don't report people on the
Exciting,
right.
even.
I only report people on the left. I don't report people on the right. I'm a bit of a conservative myself.
Okay, fair enough. I don't really do politics, but you know.
Oh, you mean write a report, like a police report?
Yeah, mate. Yeah. All right. So you'll just have to basically say, you'll add myself, Peter, and yourself as the officers involved. You'll log down what we found, obviously the time, where we are, and just that we were reporting. We were. Oh, my phone's dinging. We were en route to a shots fired call.
Right, easy, mate. I'll do this into the car, mate.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds good to me. All right.
Yeah, yep.
All right, Peter, we're going to go to that postal box job.
Right. Yeah, I'll do this in the car on the way there, and I'll bloody try and get this done.
All right.
Yeah,
sounds
no
good.
worries. Sorry.
Just nice and short, eh? Nothing too fancy.
Everything. Yeah, it's difficult to catch the bail things because I believe we get the call after the fact, so you have to sort of try to catch them when they code for the next one.
Ah, yeah, copy.
That fucking plants that are growing there. They look suspicious, those do. Anyway, I tried to third eye on. Might put a seatbelt on. No, we only need to unbind.
I just got to change our unit type in the MDT.
No, where is this? It's keyboard, numpad 1, 2, 3. What was 7? Advise location first and RP police. Unbind keybind 7.
Fucking pig coming out of nowhere.
Pad 8. And that's 9. I'll do this. Go back into here, settings, key bindings, hit this one. 5M. Back to not 8. Oh, there we go. I can hit that without buddy setting my location, everyone. Perfect.
Fantastic.
Beautiful. Now I get this bloody report done.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Right. Shots fired. Shots fired, chat. Eh? Shots fired. Right, and there's Peter. There's Joey. Is it Joseph Mudgley? 411. Joseph Bravo, gotcha. Alright. And can I add myself? Was it, am I already added? Surely, right? No tags needed. Good evidence. I didn't do anything yet. What was it? Look out, he's on duty. Yeah, he is.
Where are you from, Bernard?
Originally I was from Sydney, mate. I spent some time in Melbourne, moved back to Sydney, and then back to Melbourne now.
Yeah, right. Fair enough, mate.
Where the fuck were we, chat? Well, I am on chat, on Cop Westy. How are you, mate? What's crack like with your buddy Tuesday? I was working, that's what you did. Just gonna try and smash it.
Look around, mate. See who's
Just gonna try and smash this out.
themselves. Yeah. Right. Oh, you still doing the report?
Yeah, just I got rid of the bloody boards for me, buddy. You know the lock. So yeah.
Right. I'll go have a bit of patrol.
Oh, he's having a patrol. Now I need to actually. I can do this. Bring it up. So we were at the watchtower just here. Feeling super busy. Thanks for the support and lurk last night. Oh, that's completely fine, bro. I seen that you were live after I finished streaming because I just played Vice City Stories and I was like, oh, I probably should rate a Westie, and I was like, I just left it on the lurk there for you. I got that clip at the end when something, what was it, down when bloody Johnny came in, but he knocked out both you coppers. It's between 4003 and 4001. It was shots fired, and then the serial number is this sucker here. Copy serial. All right, shots fired. Roughly 7, or is it 1900 hours? 19, we'll say 1920 hours. Hours, June 16th. I think we're actually highway at the moment, aren't we? So, highway 411 responded to shots fired call. With whoever Jackson Wallace call sign is.
Hey, get a tow rope on you?
Negative, sir. Negative.
Negative? Alright, I'll see if I got one.
What size casings? Something casings? Casings were recovered.
Hey, I don't think you can park a boat there, mate.
From scene?
Yeah, I'm actually trying to find my tow rope because I think that's an impoundable
Serial
offence.
number.
I mean, it's in a parking spot, sort of.
Yeah,
No suspects.
it's a car park
Targeted.
though, you know what I'm saying?
Alright,
Yeah.
let me go back to the dashboard. Gotta see, was it dispatch?
You know,
We have
like there's no legislation.
1:30.
There has
So
to
I
be
go
a
back to your report.
car.
You know, that's fair.
Debt 130.
Fair. But I'd also
BT
like to,
130.
perhaps move it to the ocean for safety's sake.
And then, what was it? Go back to dispatch. Make sure we're Mel 411 in a highway car.
I don't have a tow rope on me anyway, so it's staying there.
And what were these casings? These were events bag of 9mm casings. Nine millimeter casings, boom. Yeah, I think that's good, mate.
No, I'll have a look, mate. Let's have a gander here.
Yep. It's just under shots forward. Oh, I did put a location in there, actually, shit.
Yeah. Alright.
Just check it.
What you'll do is you'll put a serial number in the weapons database. You'll add that as a weapon.
Yep.
Known pistol. Yeah.
Alright, I just have to check that location in there as well. It was just between 4001 and 4003 it was.
Yep.
That's fired call. between. And 4003. Boom. That's it done. So that's that the part. And then was it weapons database? A weapon name. Is it this pistol? I think I can edit this after the fact, but I'm pretty sure it was just pistol. Make sure it just said pistol on it, didn't it? That should be added into the weapons database now.
Fantastic. Alright, mate. I'll have a quick squiz. Let me just have a look on the computer here.
The boom chat.
Yeah, mate. That's
Is this thing posted in my photos? Bloody hell, I'm gonna click around that off if you guys can chat too. Make sure you guys exclamation mark join to get in there.
It's my back window smashed. Are all my windows missing?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
On the right side, you're missing the windows, yeah.
Hey, what's going on there?
Oh, you got a 3 stream streak as well. Westy, you've been lurking for us as well. How you doing, Lego? Look who's on cop, mate. Hey, get off the man.
Raining in your eyes, right?
Oh, I think it is. Yeah, it's pretty wet. I'm getting damp here.
Yeah. Sorry, mate.
It's alright. I'm used to getting wet around bitches like yourself.
Oh! He's got jokes, does he?
Yeah.
Interesting.
What did I say?
Getting wet around bitches, mate. There you go. Look at that. Hey?
Oh, sorry, mate. You got distracted there.
It's the funniest thing you've said all night, mate.
I just could smell the vanilla unicorn, mate. I thought we were at the fish shop.
Alright, well, I'm going to get something to eat.
Oh, I need that as well, yeah.
Yeah?
Exclamation mark follow, which is the one you want Lego, mate, to get in there. And Westy, I thought you were already in there, but maybe he doesn't do it for the watch streaker message. Didn't like it, dude. Didn't like it. That's alright. How was your stream about last night? What'd you get up to? Did you get up to much? I was lurking. I just seen you guys getting harassed by Johnny by the end because I was doing a bit of editing, bit of talking shit. You know, the usual.
Chicken burgers, mate.
Chicken burger.
Chicken burger. No, can't. Shouldn't say that, silly.
There you go. Oh. Wait, who gave me a Polaroid?
That would have been probably Peter.
Oh yeah, he took a photo. Look at that, beautiful.
Yeah, so add that to that report if you want. I'm guessing is it a
Yeah, but I've got to add that to the evidence locker, correct?
yeah, we'll have to go back to the police station for that. But yeah,
Yep, but it's the same. If you remember, yes, they are. Right, put this in there. That's all that evidence. And check this up here. Boom, boom. Get it up there. But how you doing, Lego? What's your cracking, bro? I seen. Were you on bloody crim, mate? Is that what you were doing the other night? Am I mistaken in saying that? I did see you were at the Interceptor stuff.
Nice, Jesus.
Yeah, better get him myself. Maybe get some more food in case.
Yeah, you're right.
Gonna fly in soon. I'm keen to see the Lego, mate. And who's gonna get this raffle? 2 people splitting it, 50k chips each. Westy got 50k and Lego got 50k. Nice. You know how to spend those chippies. You could fucking go spend them on roulette. You can spend them on. You can spend them on bloody Pokemon eggs. You can spend them on bloody blackjack. You can spend them on. What else is there? There's so many things in the casino. I can't even think of it right now. Yeah, was that just the Interceptor training? I swear I've seen you. I could be you recently on Crim. I could be tripping, but I was on the highway in a truck. You could have been on your cop butt doing something. Oh, Reggie Rock. That's a rare fucking one. Bit of fun. Yeah, dude. Yeah, nice. That looks fun as I'm actually sad I missed out on that. I seen that roll call was at I'll buy 2 more of each. I seen roll call was at 7:30, you know, planned to do the Vice City story stream, and I was a bit like, fuck, like I could go to that, but I've been saying I'm gonna do this for a couple of days now, a couple of weeks now. And I keep just fluffing it off, so I had to get done. Look, no one's gonna try and catch this mon. I'm gonna try and catch a Reggie Rock.
back on the patrol, mate. See if we can find
Here we go.
find anyone committing crimes.
Where's all the bloody filthy criminal scab?
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll try again too.
Like the majority of
Excuse me, sorry, chat.
criminals are probably, I don't know, pretending to be cops at the moment.
Oh. Yep.
Also, Joseph, you need to change your unit to a highway.
Ah, yes. Good call.
Try this again. I can actually play this while I'm passenger princessing around the place.
Let me do that.
Yeah, I might change that report then to say highway because I had it say Mel.
Ah, Mel's fine. It's not going to make a difference.
Oh no! No Pokemons for me. No, that's not it, Chief. I shouldn't be sitting here playing my own track games. That's bad. Menace material, that is. Oh, yeah, this is a good opportunity to fix. I was looking at this the other day.
Quiet and clear.
Where is it? Overlay A. I need to move. No space. Death counter.
You'll have to leave my call sign. Apparently, I can't make a new one with you on it.
Yeah, understood, sir.
Yeah, it's a bit stupid, but that's how it works, apparently.
Where is it, Mel? Leave. Oh, Lego's already on too. Look at that.
There you go. Alright, jump on traffic for 11, mate.
Hey, Mom.
Oh, it's TRF anyway. Yeah, sorted, sir. Not doing here. Oh, it's Peter.
130's in a code 4 with a green and colour police car. No additional. Hey!
Hi, mate.
Yeah, just Sergeant Jackson off with
backup.
No, he seems armed. Yeah, might need backup.
Move this over a little bit so it's good space.
Yeah, so the reason I just pulled you over is you're parked on a curb, mate.
Yeah, that's very true, I am, aren't I?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
It's not good, is it?
It's not the red part of the curb, though, so I'm not sure if it's illegal.
But, like, it is, because you're technically, like, you're parked on the footpath right now, so, like, you're supposed to be, like, wheel against the curb, not, like...
You're getting done dirty here, I think.
Yeah, so I gotta be more like this.
Yeah.
Oh!
Just like that. Is that?
Yeah, so that's actually, I don't know if you know that there is this charge called damage of property or something like criminal damage, that's it.
Sounds like you don't know the charge.
My private property, so...
Property?
Property, yeah.
I'm not seeing any damage.
What's the charge?
Really, my front lights
Tell
no longer work, mate.
What's the charge? Eating a succulent bumper meal?
Yes.
What's the charge, mate?
The charge is criminal damage for all this.
Hang on, mate.
Under my car.
That'll buff out, mate. That's all good. There you go. Look at that. Look at that.
Did you know that it's legal to piss on your back right tyre?
Quickly fix that up for you, mate. Look at that.
What, sorry?
It's actually legal to piss on your back right tyre. No, it's legal in public to pee on your back right tyre if there's no other public urinals.
No, I'm pretty sure this is...
Can you unlock the car for a sec?
Well, I haven't started with it yet.
No.
No, I just got to finish fixing it for a sec. I need you to unlock it for me.
We gotta do it now while he's distracted.
Yeah, I just got to finish cleaning it inside. Yeah, there you go. Look at that. I'll buff that. I'll buff those headlights up, mate. They should work a treat now. Yeah.
Oh my god!
You caused an accident.
Oh.
I think it's fog lights over here that's caused the accident. What the fuck? Wait, you struggling to say or something? Is that bright enough or?
Crickets.
Crickets, yeah. Fair enough.
Just have some ID on you, sir. Preferably a driver's license. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What's on dirty chat?
Hang on, how do we know he's a police
There
officer?
you go.
Hang on a minute. How do we know he's a police officer? He's
What
out
do
of
you mean?
uniform.
Yeah.
That's a
There you go.
disgusting picture. No, just
Oh,
license if you
Jesus Christ. I need some bleach.
Yeah, well, I haven't actually even looked at this thing for such a long time. There you
covered by.
go.
Oh, it's out of date, isn't it?
Oh, no.
Hey, you were
There
just
go.
driving a motor vehicle, weren't you? So that's.
Nah,
really-
Bernard was driving it, I believe.
Mine's also out of date,
He's
mate.
also out of date. So which one wants to cop the fine?
Yeah, I'm not looking very good here. I'm a lowly recruit. It was this guy.
Tonight.
Well,
We're just gonna get you to go right to City Hall and get that updated for me, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. We'll get
I
that
might, need to, I
organised.
might need to get that checked out as well.
Oh, show me your license. You were just driving. Come on.
oh,
Oh no, you're good.
Oh,
I'm
he's
good.
fine. Yeah, he's
Oh.
I
bloody-
know I'm good because I got
Teacher's
pulled over
pet.
for it the other day.
Hang on, why is there glasses in your photo?
Where's the legislation that says I can't have glasses in my photo?
Yep,
Just
just
a clear photo, bruh.
finish cleaning this up for you, mate. Hang on. Yeah, look at that. Yeah,
so, can we help you, officers? Or
there we go. There you go. All good.
is there a problem here, officers?
Yeah. You're
Look,
driving illegally. Driving
Alright, so,
illegally, no.
look, I think this has been a successful traffic stop. We're gonna go about our day now. Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Mr. Whittaker, do you feel like you've learned something during this traffic stop?
That you're a little bit annoying.
Ah!
Oh, no, actually, yes, I did learn something, that we got to renew our licenses every 30 days.
Down.
I stutter. I was a stutter.
No, that's alright.
I said you're a little coy thing.
Yeah, just, maybe... I'm a sergeant, don't forget. Put some respect on my name.
Sorry, next time Sergeant jack him off, I will put some respect on the drip.
We've got to go before I say something in city.
What? What would you say that's insidious? Is it a really good horror movie?
That's a good horror movie. You're right.
Yes.
It is. Yeah.
Free to go, my lights are still on.
You're not afraid to go.
Alright.
Is there calls to go to?
Yep,
might have someone playing a traffic stop, might have to chase him.
Oh no.
Wait a minute. Are we actually?
I'm not sure. We did hear a license, mate. He does look like he's behind us.
Slightly bit faster than me.
Try to run the old.
I mean, you're driving a Kuruma. They have a freaking highway car.
Bring back the interceptor chip.
Oh, Sapaku, thank you for the follow. It's Crackle Lackham with you Tuesday. I was work asking you home if that's what you did, G-Star. Currently getting chased here by Jacksonov. Better give the sergeant respect, put respect on their name. Bernard doesn't even know what respect means anymore. He's getting senile, alright? That's gonna be my whole character roleplay, is I'm just gonna forget everything. I'm gonna be the actual worst cop. And this way I can never get looked at for leadership again. That's actually my ploy, OOC. Yeah. Just act like an absolute spoon, and no one's ever gonna look at me for... I'm gonna stay... I'll just get this constable. I'll stay a constable. First one,
sorry,
orders.
Peter. Were you trying to pull us over? Did you want to have a chat?
Should give comms like her in the chase, but getting chased? I will actually, that's a fun idea. Yeah, TRF 411 making a left of the peaceful street.
That's alright, I'm just gonna put a confirmed ID arrest warrant out for him.
Yeah.
The traffic stop and they identified themselves.
Now heading northbound, Los Agotas Boulevard. Yeah, high rates of speed.
Oh, it's might have to accidentally make that.
Is my radio not working? TRF 411 going northbound Los Agotas Boulevard. High rates of speed,
What are you doing? What are you doing?
I'm giving calls. I'm just doing a good police work. Now making a right at the Vinewood Boulevard. Going about 150 k's an hour. Then a further right going southbound down Alta Street. Again, it works now. It's going through. Right now we're heading in an eastbound direction of Spanish Avenue. I think the eastbound and westbounds are broken on this thing, isn't it? So, He's just hitting the legs. He's not saying anything back. Oh, fuck. He's just like, no. I did that one. That's completed. There you go.
Where are we going?
You're telling the story, sir.
Just making it up as I go. Hey, look, I told you from the word go, I only show up
It could be.
on duty when I feel like it.
You show up at duty when you feel like it.
Yeah.
I do duties about 3 times a day at my age. You know, sometimes it runs down my leg.
Oh, yeah, fair enough. I can't say I've had that problem yet, but, I mean, I only went to the Afghanistan war, so...
Did you wear butt plugs on the regular? So I just wear nappies now. The plugs are a bit abrasive.
What was that, Peter?
It could be real life though, Sabak. I reckon it is.
You just drove into a bus stop?
I'm not sure how you can see that.
He's parked behind us, sir.
What do you mean?
259, there's a boat in the Vespucci Market car park.
Yeah, look, we've already talked about that. It's in a car park. It's all good, mate.
Yeah, parked illegally, mate, just to defend the water. Someone's fucking dropping their boats off in the car parks. That's not good. It's not ideal. Keep accidentally running.
Oh, that's right. We have to do that stupid fucking test again.
Are we meant to have weapons licenses as police officers as well?
No, I think it comes with the job, mate.
I don't come with the job. That sounds inappropriate.
I come with the job all the time.
Oh.
Slow down. Stop briefly. Continue. Only. 60 zones.
I'm gonna do all this. I'm doing a quick graph for you guys to chat.
Yeah, park.
Is it gonna let me type it out? Is it working? There you go.
Painted red. Cannot park there.
100k. Make sure he's exclamation mark join.
Yeah, there we go. Here's sirens. You better get out of the way, mate.
There's some daily rewards. I'm not using that on this character, but
Solid.
can't park there.
Yeah, if you're driving with friends, one is sitting in a boot, and the other is me. What's one in the boot?
Emergency vehicles, you hear sirens behind you while you're driving.
Passengers must be properly seated and wearing seatbelts. That's right. Loss of traction.
Having a code for a two-door color supercar right outside of Vespucci Hospital. No additionals.
There you go.
Producing a driver's license. You were pulled over by police.
They should really implement eye tests of this. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, that's
Spam C. Spam.
I think they need to implement reading tests a bit more simpler, because this is a bit annoying. I'm really over it already. You know what I mean?
It's only 10 questions to be fair. It's not that bad.
Yeah, but I already did it once. You know what I mean?
Yeah, as far as things go, it's really not the worst thing, but I understand.
True.
But you want to be held to a different standard than the criminals of this city, because I sure do.
Yeah, no, I also do.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, I feel like we're just a bit better, you know?
I tell you this much, my penis is definitely small. I mean larger. Yep. Well, it used to be anyway. I'm gonna wait in the car.
Yeah. Nah, it's fine. We're good to go, mate.
Alright.
What's this guy do? Oh, that's a door there, mate. Nice.
That guy does something, doesn't he? How you doing, Blooding, by the way? What's crack lacking? Brilliant police work here. Hey, Lego's doing stuff. Actually, Officer, is it 259? If you have a tow rope, you could probably remove that boat from there, impound it or etc.
Hey, Rachel, what's up?
How you doing, Sandra? Still, what's crack for Tuesday? How was work? How was keeping home this week? Did?
You might need to remark your car after you spot the highway.
It says it's marked in my eyes.
Different.
Yeah, it's not for me, however. I don't know about Lego. It might just be a me issue, though.
I don't see the highway car at all.
I'm just gonna spam the fuck out of the mark button on my computer here. Hang on. Let me have
Have we got locked up? It is locked up. Is it this one? Was it 5? Yeah. Well, I've removed the lock. Got it off. Got it out of there. I wonder, is chat annoying when it sits over the bloody speed? I like that. I can move it. It's probably a good time to even talk about that because I was like looking at this the other day. I was thinking maybe we can move it up a little bit so it's not just sitting on the speedo.
I can track the vehicle on the MDT.
To be fair, let's just do it now. Let's just do it now. Why not? What are we gonna do? Hit it like this. Let's move it up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'll chuck this over here. Move it left a little bit. Or right,
How do
sorry.
you feel about driving there, Bernard? I think maybe you're ready, mate.
I'm ready, he reckons. Alright. Yeah, right, mate. Let me shuffle over.
Yeah.
Camera this is that. Camera this, that. What do you mean they've been cooked, mate? You're cooked, Mr. Raw. Right? Which one's my bloody light to you? What the fuck? That's right, yeah, right. Yeah, right. So we're highway patrolling the city streets. We should go look for a highway. That's a yes. Let's go. Nice, Andrews. You're happy. Well, Mr. Raw, since you got so many opinions, mate, how about you give us a good one and give us some constructive criticism.
On the unmarked mirror near Vespucci PD. Can I get you one additional, please?
Dear, whatever the way.
Rear-ended.
Oh, which one do you want to go to? Just send us to one of them.
You want to? Yeah. You want
Either.
To that one, mate?
Just pick one. We'll go Lego or bloody Jacobuff.
Oh, I think there's a good chance they're on both, mate.
All right, we'll get us over there. Which one's is it? The right siren?
Try your R muscle.
Thank you.
You're welcome, mate. I'm just thinking about food, so yeah.
Yeah, but come on, Mr. Raw. Surely you got something for us. You can give us some constructive criticism. What do I need to change, mate? Get the camera back on. My hair's all poofy today. Look at Mammy the Mammoth.
No, it's my backup.
Oh, it's the same call. These spoons. I'm just back up.
I'll back up whoever wants it, mate.
No, you've got to pick a side.
Well, look, you know,
This guy's as bad
the
dickheads,
the
man.
logical choice here is to pick the most senior.
I'm literally
I'm the most senior.
cup of the
Literally,
sandwich
look,
right
he's
now.
rear-ended my car. Like you can see it right
You
now.
rear-ended my
Mm.
car before.
I think I'm the most senior, to be honest.
Yeah,
You are
look,
old as fuck. I mean, huh?
he's not lying. He's the most senior.
Yeah, I'm only 76. It's not that bad.
I don't know how old am I? I don't know how to math. What's that?
27, mate.
No, thank you.
See? 76.
Yeah, right. Oh
25.
God, you're a spring chicken, mate.
Was it thought?
What happened was this guy rear-ended me and tried to do a hit and run. I just pulled him over here. Now he's accusing me of rear-ending him.
Is it this
He
one?
doesn't have any evidence. See, and he's lying.
Is it this one?
Whereas you can clearly see he's rear-ended me here for no reason.
You brake checked me.
Huh?
There you go.
Now I brake checked you. If you were
Yeah.
a safe distance away.
My car was stationary and you reversed into me. What do you
No,
mean?
so now I reversed it to you, but before it was I brake checked you. So
Tries a better angle. This?
it keeps changing, guys. That would have been so funny. I can't lie.
Oh,
Anyway.
you want me to get hurt? Okay, that's evidence as well.
I've got this recorded as well. Got my body cam in his face.
I really like that. that pose you're doing there. It's really nice.
Just gotta make sure I get evidence. I'm getting evidence. I'm taking photos.
Your flash is on.
Yeah, I'm taking photos. Oh wait, the flash is facing the wrong way. I'm taking photos of myself, aren't I? Good angle.
You don't look 76. You look younger than that. I'm gonna be dead honest with you.
Oh, that's very nice thing of you to say, Lego.
Ooh.
What do you want?
I think he doesn't look a day over 87.
Wait, hey. Oh, I'm gonna hurt that guy. I don't want to do that. Is this what policing is in this city? This is my second shift as a recruit. And so far, I've just been next to Jackimoff for the whole time. Jackimoff, that's right.
You want me to jack you off? I didn't think it worked anymore.
Guess we'll find out. Oh, Jesus. I've walked away.
Any attention to that bastard.
Look at it in the spin.
What is he
Listen to
doing
me.
in the bin?
You don't pick up the phone to him anymore. You got that?
Why's that local run?
Oh!
Coming over this evening.
Um,
Run in that direction.
I think my recruit just got in the bin.
It's dark!
Let's get out of here. Let's get out of here.
Oh, I've got out. Oh, it's alright. Oh, no, this doesn't look good.
For fuck's sake.
Traffic was horrible.
Ow.
Oh, no.
My face.
I seem to have become Sandman.
sorry.
Can someone help me, please?
Can we lift you? Or
Yeah, if you just carry me through, you know, if you can find a special carrier, mate, you can probably carry me.
How about six? Did you think about slash fix me or something?
Oh.
Did you think about that?
It'd be better if you picked me
Quick,
up,
Lego,
wouldn't
go
it?
Get the drug dealer.
Oh. There you go.
Oh, he's over there. Quick.
Oh shit, we gotta go.
Alright, let's get out of here, mate.
Yeah, you can definitely pick some up.
The unmark go so that it's not too obvious.
Oh yeah, actually, it's probably not a bad idea, yeah.
I'm busy. Oh no.
Los Santos Freeway. Is that waypoint?
Ah, stupid car. I can't get in my car.
You can't trust me to catch a drug dealer. This is ridiculous.
I've always got to drive on the highway. Jesus Christ.
Peter, are you drunk?
Yeah, right.
The local scared me. He turned into me and I panic turned, okay?
That sounds like a superior officer.
The victim card, I see.
You don't know me very well if you don't know that's always my card.
It's so obvious going to this drug sale.
What
Just
other
three
cards do you
cops.
have?
Just fucking. There's a car in the middle of the road back there.
Reverse?
You know, we'll keep up with, to Jackson What a name, but oh, this thing hooks. Absolutely hooks. I'm surprised at that. I think I'm stressing a bit.
Sorry, mate.
Why are you brake checking before, sir?
Just teaching you spacing.
Pull over, Peter. We're going to stop and exchange insurance information.
Doesn't have any.
That's a wall there,
They
sir.
won't insure you anymore.
No comment. I had to stop because I never marked the call.
I'm going for Sonara Road in case he tries fleeing through Route 68.
Hey, so someone went 329 kilometers through that.
Oh my
They
god.
definitely had nitrous, surely.
Right, so we're very obviously turning up to this place. Cool. Don't go. Oh, we found him anyway. Is that him there? No. So is this stratified drug sellers just driving straight in their flights and sirens?
Works every time. Catch it by surprise.
For this code 4, made no eyes. Except on some hamburger making, was it greasy cunt here?
Sorry?
Oh, the eyes I've got is a hamburger maker. It looks pretty greasy in front of the U2.
We can't comment on people's ethnicities, alright?
Yes, sir, I apologise. Negative on eyes at the truck here, whatever this is, the trucking place here. We're going to drive this dirt road back towards the recycle centre. Actually not wearing my seatbelt. Okay. I should have just arrested him.
No, I'll detach. I'll head back to the city.
Hit that.
I think you guys can get him off.
I agree, definitely scared him. Alright, we get on the highway. Actually, some highway patrolling now because we're being spooned. So these guys are going to crash into each other again. I'm going to park up here. Give me 1 minute. Surely that's a legal parking spot. Work is completed. Off that, we get on the highway. Do we need fuel or anything? We've got 20% fuel.
It's 329 on the Sonora Freeway.
Everybody get a bit of fuel there, sir.
Yeah, mate. Sounds like a plan.
Gonna get him. She went back and grabbed him.
Okay, let's all take a deep breath.
Oh, it's a busy night if the cops out here arrest each other. I have to come and do this a bit more. You need to get some Pokeballs, mate. If you want to buy some Pokeballs, Mr. Spucku, it's ! buy item space Pokeball. Space the amount. I'll show you now. Just a little buy item Pokeball. And then I'll buy 5 quickly. But bam. And you can buy like Great Balls, Pokeballs, Safari Balls, Netballs. There's a bunch. There's like 10 of them, I think. I made in the end there. And they all have different effects. And actually do something. Because I no-lifed it for a couple of weeks and decided to make an entire Pokemon chat game that works for Twitch, YouTube, and Kick. So I thought it'd be cool. Oh, it sounds like you need chips, mate. Well, you know what I can do here? Give chips. Unbelievable. I can actually give you some of mine because I'm actually rich as fuck for some reason. There you go, boom. And then I'll do a raffle for 100k. And I play blackjack. This is what I actually use to keep Jimmy in here. You gotta use exclamation mark join there, big nuts. We got 10 and 2, we got 12, we got a hit on this. Straight up. 16, that's a stand. I lost a K, and you won. Look at that, there's heaps there. But if you want to find out more commands, it's exclamation mark commands in chat. And there's heaps in there. I think everything except blackjack and the slot machine, I've made custom. I'm trying to remember if that's everything. Yeah, slots, blackjack. I think there's one more. Black guy's speeding. That's just another officer. Oh, is it an emergency? Is it?
I'm on the road, so there's always an emergency.
I understood. Yeah, I went real hard and I made these over a couple of weeks when my dad was real sick before I went up north and that. That's how I was distracting myself, to be honest. This guy's just cruising around like a menace. They're just trying to get the speed thing.
Speeding car on the highway, mate.
We go pull the copper over.
Yeah.
They got lights on, but... Well, they did have lights on.
Yeah, but it's not a marked police car, you know? Like, we don't know he's a real police.
Sluts. Make the sluts a thing. Bring it in. You got done by the auto mod.
Oh, actually, he's technically marked, isn't he?
Yeah, he's marked with the old... Was it mini map? He's called, but fuck me.
He's quick. Oh, no, there he is.
He's just unmarked himself. Actually, I think that might be driverless, that car.
Oh, you think maybe he,
Yep. Oh, no, I see him. Let's make sure the lights are on quickly. Just... Oh, sorry. Okay, now slow down. I should probably stop, actually.
yeah, yep.
Oh, nice. And the raffle's ending. Who's going to win this raffle? And the winner is Westy.
I feel like
Okay.
it's Super Troopers.
Basically, he's this Super Troopers, mate. I'm obviously doofy at this point.
What's that flying down the highway?
Huh? Super Trooper 1, mate. Super Trooper 2's en route.
Super Trooper 2's doing the speed limit, not like Sergeant at Arms over there.
Yeah, on the highway.
These cars drive nice. Get good loser.
Sentinel's a very nice police car.
Yeah, it's an M5 basically.
Yeah.
Right, so hallway, go hallways, look out for things. I might do a quick Polito, right? You never know, maybe a rock to it.
Speed, guys. I was en route to a call.
It also costs you 500 chippies for the song request as well. It's any Spotify song will work. Links,
Yeah.
artist name, and
The sergeant one. Don't worry about it.
artist name and the song name also works. Is any businesses open? I'll quickly check the hotspots. Mine over? No hotspot there. This is open. Got a UFO sighting in 15.
Don't forget to spin the wheel at the casino, guys. You'll get more money than you get paid.
That is a fat shit. You wanna do a casino run?
It's like the casino.
Yeah, mate.
50 chips. That's $50 dollars. Might be 500 chips or 50 chips, both of them. Alright, dude, alright. We'll come back, we eat this speed thing, buddy. No one's come this way either, did held by that bloody speed trap back there.
For sure. I'm still thinking about some food.
Yeah, you're right, mate.
World's slowest eater.
Right, it's an emergency to get to the casino anyway, isn't it? You still got no Pokeballs. You never bought any in there, bros.
Sure.
Never bought any in. Exclamation mark buy item, space Pokeballs, Pokeball, and the amount you want to buy there, lad. You can, I think they're like 5k each. How do I buy Pokeballs? Exclamation mark buy item, space, Pokeball, space, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever number you want. No. I showed you the Poke lad. Well, it's Pokeball, not balls. Are you kidding me? We both did the same thing, lad. No, that's on me. That's on me. That's straight up on me, bro. But yeah, that's it. That's so on me. I'm so sorry, bro. My bad. My bad. Yeah, there you go. Get some Pokeballs. You got Master Balls too. Jazz has got a bunch of Master Balls because little guy, my son, he plays the bloody Pokemon in the chat all the time. He loves it. Absolutely loves it. I'm gonna get this guy the Casado button, get that jumper off and get a glass of water. After we do our spin, I reckon, or maybe let him do a spin or something. He's still eating. They're gonna be rushing to give me a highway, but are they? With this driving skill. And he's gambled, he's hit the slots, he's lined up 2 and 2. He's only won 10 chippies. You can actually. Oh no! Oh, you're right, sir. Okay, they're right there. They're still driving.
I think they're dead.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Yes.
Sorry guys, I want 15k, it's all good.
Is it an emergency over at the casino? We'll be there in a moment. This car's having an emergency, to be honest with you. Make sure it's locked. Alright, sweet. Oh, bro. No way. You can split if you want. Use exclamation mark split. It'll split your hand. The split, stand, hit. Real doors, 611. You won 2k, nice. Hey. Is that a fucking monkey noise in this song? It's great to see the chimpanzee fucking scream.
If I locked my car, to be honest.
No one's won the Shiva yet either, eh? No one's won the car.
Don't hurt yourself climbing over things, jeez.
Oh, I do it slowly, it's alright.
Oh, wait, there's something here.
Hmm? Where's all the crime? Where's all the crime, chat? Am I the only one that does crime? What's going on? If I chosen Tuesday as a bad night to get on the car, is that not ideal? Probably isn't, to be honest. Hey.
How can I help you?
Why doesn't let you play 2 hands of blackjack at the same time? What if I broke it? Tripping. It must let you play 2 at once. Normally it doesn't.
Here you go.
23 and then you bust out. There you go. I'm glad that it works. I actually have it set up so you can't run 2 at once because it janks up the cards a little bit. Like the display cuts. But it worked, so no complaints from me. Is Jimmy in here? He's like almost always in here hanging out doing men's shit over there.
Another player is trying the lucky wheel. Will they win big or remain a disappointment in life?
Hopefully I don't win any chippies and have to walk over there again. That'd be not ideal. Gotta buy a torch as well, chat. Another torch.
Ah, that's a bit rude.
At least it's not
Better
drinks.
than drinks or nothing.
Yeah.
I have another ticket in my pocket apparently. So.
Oh. Get to wait a minute, I think. Right, we're giving a big spin. Big, huge spin.
No, you never do fast. You always get shit when you go fast. You gotta go slow.
Gotta go really, really fast.
There it goes. The lucky wheel is spinning and another
That was like full strength. Oh, is that? Oh my god. Straight jinxed myself.
No, it's 3k.
Oh, money. Nice. Sorry.
That's more than you can make as a recruit in like a year.
Oh, balling. Is that the kids say these days, balling?
Sure.
And another contender is trying their luck on the lucky wheel.
I like that made him laugh.
Oh wait, maybe I get a wheel spin ticket off my other spin. Hold on.
Oh, you got chippies, nice.
12.5 plus 3, that's 15.
Not bad.
I got a picture of a pistol. That's nice.
Oh, don't you love when you get them?
You can have a picture.
Pictures of gads.
Oh. I've got a picture of a knife. There you go. What else do I have a picture of? Oh, thanks you. That's actually my girlfriend.
Nice.
What else do I have a picture of in here? Nothing. I have no other pictures.
Have a baguette. Here you go, sir.
What do you call me?
I said have a baguette.
Thin ice.
And Coke for the boys. Excuse me, FTO Johnny. Was it Joe?
Yeah, Joey. Yeah, not Johnny.
Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Joe, wasn't it? Or was it Jose?
Joey.
Hose?
Joe. E.
Joe?
Joe. E.
EA Sports, it's in the game.
Ah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm gonna go.
Recruit, Peter.
He's too old for me, unfortunately.
Oh, mate, you know, he might teach you a thing or two.
Uh-oh.
You know what they say with age, mate, comes experience.
Made him speechless. Now you can catch the Murkrow. Yay. Alright, let me go sit in the passenger seat for a moment, because this is a thrilling conversation.
Yep.
Passenger princess.
Yes, I am. I've been driving the whole time. I hit us some hardstyle, lad. Let's go. Start doing shapes. Start cutting shapes. Let's go, chat. Alright, I'm gonna go hang in this passenger princess of the car. It's classic, but makes me feel like I'm clubbing. Alright. It's gonna be in my head for a moment, sir.
You're all right, mate. You're all right.
Alrighty, chat. I'm gonna click on another raffle for you guys in chat. Make sure you guys use exclamation mark join to get into a 50k. Make it cheap for you. Make sure you enjoy the beats. Make sure you use exclamation mark join. Back with you guys in a second after I go drink a water and go to the toilet. Right, so keep back, relax, enjoy, get into that raffle. I'll be back with you guys in a minute. Fucking hell. Good music, bro. I'll turn the music back up for you. My hair's a mess. I wash the hair. And it's all fucking laying down.
Yeah, look, I'm thinking about exchanging the passport.
Oh, you couldn't give the old man 30 more minutes, could you?
How many is that?
30 more minutes, mate.
Oh, yeah.
I can take it if you wish, though.
But that might also be not a bad idea, the passport.
Yeah?
Yeah, but a doof. I haven't gone to doof for a long time. I've got DJ next behind me.
Yeah, look, that'd be greatly appreciated, Peter. I feel like maybe you'll have something to do.
Yeah, no worries. As soon as I figure out where MRPD is, I'll be there.
He's lost, can't find MLPD.
I'm around the corner.
Yeah, the last time I went to an actual doof, I was like fucking 2018. I'm not going. You're flying in, or I'll see you. You'll see me in cop.
Handover with you so you're aware of where he's up to as a recruit.
I'm up to somewhere. Is it bad?
Nah.
Yeah, I wised up. I stopped going to bush doofs. Oh, not wised up. Oh, he's there. Oh, hello, sir.
What's happening?
It's happening, that's for sure.
Are you okay there, old man?
No.
Seems the aliens are
I'm alright, bud. I just wiggle a lot, you know.
Fair enough, mate, fair enough.
Alright, so I have to join your car, solid.
Those aliens out there, mate.
This is a banger.
Yes, my call sign. You sir again, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Do I get my MP5?
Oh, we got skies or?
Was it taken off you?
Yeah, what's his name? What's his name?
Right, to stand here.
Williams or something.
I'll stand here and hold my best.
I don't know, it was a cam thing.
Have a good shift, sir. Got done. Gotta do it now while you got a chance. Too quick off the mark.
You might have to wait till he's around, because I don't know if it was taken off you. I would assume it's probably in the evidence.
Just head bopping while these guys talk to each other.
But I don't know. Let me actually look.
Okay.
See, Jazz is cheating because she's got master balls. It's not good. It's not fair. Yeah, I'm going with Jackson before believe. I'm just waiting for you to exchange information. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Not in the evidence locker, so I don't know where he's shoved it.
Yeah, he might have put it into his own lockbox just to keep it safe.
Yeah, so you'd probably have to talk to him on that one.
Or I should probably put some evidence in, actually. I'll do that, yeah.
I mean, look, I could just go buy a combat PD.
Right, go put this into the bloody evidence quickly. That's upstairs, isn't it? Or was it downstairs? I think it was downstairs, wasn't it? The old fucking evidence room.
I don't see why we can't do that, eh? Like, that seems like pretty easy.
Was it down here? Am I tripping? Yeah, it was just here. Now, I've not done this before, so give it a squizzy. Case number? Police evidence? Let's see if I do this right. So if I go open this, and we go to reports. How do I get the case number? Was that not something I can get from here? Oh, evidence locker 243. Alright, so it's giving me one now. Do I just chuck these all in here? What, and do I go back in here and then go add evidence? It'll just work? Like that? 243? Did that work? Is it the right way? Have I done it the right way? Like Let's put that in here just in case it didn't. I think that's right though. Alright. I think that's right.
I'm code 5 at the marine at Sandy's, awaiting the invasion.
Waiting the invasion. There's another officer. Hello, officer. Who is that? So these doors are closed. Let's get back out of here.
Oh, there you go. Bernard.
Yeah, I was just putting evidence in to look at. That's all.
Alright.
Alright, so he said you shit at everything and you're the worst recruit he's ever seen, so we'll deal with that, I guess.
I'm a recruit.
You are a recruit, yes.
Yep.
That, well done.
Thank you.
Alright, let's kill some aliens while we
Aliens. But you gotta realise I don't run. Funny thing is I still got in the car at the same time. Don't slow it. I actually probably should unbind all my keybinds because I think I've got a bunch of shit that's like binded that shouldn't be, but that's for a off-stream another time thing because it's going to be a pain in the backside. Is there a call to attach to for this or?
Not really, but you know, we've had some aliens.
Peter, did you say there should have been a Officer Wiggums here?
Well, I have a feeling he's somewhere.
Yeah, copy.
Buddy, Lego said something about the marina, so I put the Google Maps on there.
Oh, thank you. You're really good at your job.
I do job sometimes.
I just wing it. Make it till you make it.
Ralph Wiggum.
Pretty far for that.
Why would you do Wiggum? I don't understand.
Who am I doing? No, I do the commander.
Oh!
We crashed.
Moving smooth.
And I was complaining about how I didn't think you should be able to drive because of your age, but here's me crashing. Anyways.
I think I did quite alright personally.
I was told otherwise.
He was barely even here.
Wiggums, are you around, mate?
He was buddy just daydreaming the whole time about food, that fucking fat bastard.
First thing I hear is my name. What's going on?
Hey, I'm just gonna...
There's the commander.
my MP5 off you.
The superintendent, isn't it?
No, I've been in my office for the last 2 minutes.
Yeah, right, okay. I just walked past her, I didn't see you in there. I'll head on down.
Should probably turn this radio down a little bit.
Just blending in.
We've done about
Yeah.
60 should be good. They're gonna make use of this camera angle more. We're getting here? Where are these aliens? I've got a magnum, so.
Well, I can see the bloody alien station over there. And it looks like it's gonna be at like painted or whatever you want to call it these days.
Alright. What unit are we? 130.
See it hovering menacingly.
DT 130 will be code 4 for the alien ship. Was that the right call?
I think that was an amazing
It's
call.
59,
Sorry, I'm just
also
gonna drive
code
into the
4
bushes
here.
while I get into my lockbox.
I say you've got the high ground there, 259.
Enough.
It's over 259. You have the high ground.
No, you took it out. No, I was about to say that. No.
Played Naughty Spoonie before.
Yes, I have. Oh, good. I mean, I don't know what those eggs do. Why would I know what goo is? I've never seen those before. Do you think a magnum is underpowered for this?
Oh my god, there's an egg.
Get some drop.
Oh, I shouldn't be running. Keep forgetting.
Kill the eggs! Kill the eggs!
Ugh!
Whoa!
Does this guy do something? Oh, he's a cred dude. Hey, look at that. Definitely not me. I came in that. I seen that here earlier. On old Marcus.
No fucking way!
Was that guy dead?
Got your back. Oh, another one. You got it.
Yeah, I'll get there eventually.
Good God! No fucking way!
I'm gonna get sick of not running on Bernard, I think. How long will that last is a question. The egg up top.
Good God!
Have an egg that landed up top near your vehicle 2-5 died.
I'll be there. Good eye.
No fucking way!
Is that a fire there? I don't see any more popping down.
Keep the illegal aliens from coming in.
You mean coming down?
At way south of the border is Victorians. Looks like there's another one over near the bloody trade tracks. I'm getting to the egg as fast as I can. I was nearly there. Oh. Is there a bloody thing up there?
I don't need the camper van.
Look at that, I'm actually moving fast because I aimed. I'm gonna change your walking style.
No fucking way!
Is that a local? Yep. 100% these are locals.
Good God!
I've got it. I've got this one, please. Ah, yes, I got it. Oh, yes. Ow!
Whoa! Pardon me!
I thought I had it.
Not cool.
Did you say unrack MP5s?
For this, yeah.
Good God!
You got it. You got it.
I'm trying my best to get there. I can't. He's gonna beat me there. Am I hitting this in the right spot? I always feel like I'm hitting them in like too armored of a spot. Can you hit him like in the mouth?
Need the food van.
Alright, got the eyes. Yeah, I see it, I see it. Oh no, they're on me.
Don't worry, got you covered. Top of the rock, top of the rock.
Need the highway car. I'm getting it.
We got 2 eggs in the middle. I think, yeah, got one there, Mr. Tay. Why would they keep coming out when I squished them? What's going on?
I think it's a delay where I think it was a delay.
Oh, gotcha. It's just me whenever I do it. Does not happen to these guys. I think it's my like walk style.
Another one next to the highway car.
Good God!
That it? I'll tap it so they can move a little bit quicker, but that's about it. I think that's as far as we'll go with the running. I've only done one of these on Crim. I did by myself. It's the second time I've done one. I went up next to your car there, 259. This poor guy's freaking out, the old creds, dude. So how was everyone I do? Let's see. Got it. Yeah, there we go.
Did notice some weed plants on the back of the hill to our easterly direction. If anyone wants to go get them.
Actually?
Yeah, maybe take the recruit up there.
After we get rid of all of these illegal aliens, of course. He's not going to spawn in. Oh, clapped.
I don't want.
No fucking way!
This is as fast as Bernie's going to move on people. Resist the jog. Oh, he just got it.
Oh, and that.
Gonna pop to the food store and about to drop.
Yeah, hey Fibs, it's right up next to the JD vehicle. Got one in front of me too. Take this one out. Boom. Get some goop for myself. Even though it's not really useful in this character.
Eggs, but I guess not.
Yeah. One behind you there, Peter. Yeah, beautiful.
What happens if we shoot the alien ship?
Oop, there's one over there.
You wanna get it?
I'll try. Run, Forrest, run! Oh, I don't have it on anything.
Up top.
No, got it in time. You can spend the goop on the dealer. I don't know where the dealer is on the cop, but to be fair. But at the same time, you definitely sell it. Scramble a few eggs to make an omelette, right? Don't see any more aliens popping out. Oh, they're over there. Lego's got 2 on him. Got him in time. Oh shit, are you right there? 259. I'm gonna get overrun here now. Where'd he go? I'm hitting him with the headies. And come on, let go. Where is he? We've lost him. Oh, he's down.
He's disappeared.
I can see him.
What? He was over here.
I can see him, but he's in my eyes still.
Cover me, recruit.
Coming.
Oh God. No, really, I need cover. Gotta get out of here. We get out of here.
Alright.
Get a man down. Get a man down.
Should I drive? You drive. You drive. Trying to get those shots through the glass window. To the Sandy Hospital.
Yeah.
Is that, is Lego in the boot?
No, I don't think so. Oh, did he fall out? There you go.
What?
Oh, I see.
Oh, okay. Thought it.
I swear I saw him put him in the boot, but he must be in the back seat. Was it Kangaskhan's out of here? Missing out.
It's a hospital here, I think.
Yeah, it's just up here to the right.
I never know where the desk is to check.
It's here to your right. It's the one on your right side as you walk in. Like at this desk at the front here. No, you got it. Go straight. You had it. You had it.
Me?
Yeah, this one here. Yeah. Straight as a roundabout, sit. I got you, mate. Come on. I think it's this one, isn't it?
I think it's the left. Left,
Side?
then take a right. Yeah.
Here?
Left. Keep going forward towards the pharmacy.
Behind us?
No, not this desk. Behind. So go back. You see the pharmacy?
Where the pharmacy? Where's the pharmacy, sir? I don't see it.
Behind the.
Oh, there's drugs on this side here.
It's not this side. It's the other side.
Oh, okay. The other side. Why did you say that earlier, Lego?
Sorry. There's too many poles. I couldn't really get a sense of the
What are you thinking about poles right now, sir? You're in a serious medical condition. Yes.
Okay, to the right. Keep going. Keep going.
You mean it here?
Going. Not in there. 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 To the right.
You want to go to the morgue?
To the right here. To the right here.
To the ball? Oh, no, it's just here.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh.
Hang on. Bit more.
Why is it here? Jack Smith. I swear there's one on the other side. Cafeteria. Is it not meant to be there? Is it like the old hospital spot? Hold on a minute. I swear there was one in here, this side here. Did you... Oh. Jacksonville, that doesn't look healthy. Loud and clear.
Did we win?
Where you did? Was that sorry, sir?
It's the alien radiation.
Oh, yes, yeah, I understand. I'm gonna go with it, right? Yeah, we won, son. We won. We did something right, at least. There's a few crabs on the ground, and it's not the summer of 1969, so... Back to the vehicle.
Where's my vehicle?
It's at the hippie camps there, Lego.
I don't see my vehicle.
Oh, yeah, you ran over that homeless man.
But I didn't, and that's called skill.
I feel like that was luck.
No.
I can't see my vehicle. That's funny.
It's on top of the hill.
Yeah, but...
Oh!
Oh, no. Hey, guys, there's a rail there.
On according to my GPS, it's not been marked.
It's marked now, I can see it. It's because it doesn't happen until you're close enough in your eyes to see it, you know what I mean?
Oh my gosh, what happened here?
I think my ex-wife Janice was here. There's a lot of crabs. Right, I'm here, chat. That one's still kicking. Rest of them not.
Yep, unless they drop me more. Screw this!
I think it's all over, to be honest.
Anything else around?
We're supposed to blast the alien off our thing. Stop sending eggs to our...
Well, looksy down here. Make sure there's nothing on this side. I also got flanked by that crab there and not realised, eh? They do fucking, once they get you on the ground, it's a bit hard.
I think we did it.
Taking them dead.
I think we successfully showed those aliens who's boss.
Who's more primitive? There.
Oh, another Genghis Khan. How's that? Twice in a row. Yeah, not bad. Good size.
I'll give you keys. You can drive.
Oh, I'm driving a bike. I didn't mean to steal this one.
Didn't Andrew say there was a drug farm somewhere nearby?
What?
Don't remember. He said something.
I tend to not listen to people a lot.
That's just rude. We got just arrest from Lego. Alright, what are we patrolling, sir?
Let's go to the city for now. Drive around, see what's happening.
130 returning Kate Wade. Is there a speed limit on the dirt? Oh, I guess there is. There's a sign there. Alright.
GPS says it's 80.
Yep. There's a sign back there that said 60. The sign posted signs are slower than the speedo signs. Is that GPS wrong?
Lego. Just stop the vehicle for a second.
Nothing from Lego?
Lego respond. Lego. Can I borrow you here, please?
Waiting for Lego. What's he gonna do? What's he doing to poor Lego?
Drink.
Get over. Alright.
No worry.
Pursue Lego.
Oh, okay. Understood. Pursuit training.
Yeah, why not? Nothing else happening.
Yeah.
Just let you repair the car so it's not
You did, yeah.
fucked up from my driving.
Alright then, a little bit of pursuit training with Lego. I didn't buy any repair kits either, I should have done that. Yeah, unit 259.
Something in my head.
Oh.
Oh, that's convenient.
That's right, I'll just go back to the city for now. That's where he'll be heading. Is that alright, sir, actually?
Yeah, no, it's all good. You're the senior here, so...
I suppose so. Better had to say a couple of times. Alright. Back down to the city. How's it control? Is it right control? I should be able to get this. Must have it set up. I know it was the speed limit. I was trying to figure it out. I seen the commands for it earlier and I was like, hey. Look at all the Vespucci markets, try and see what's going on down there. If there's any drug selling happening. Take the long way down too, or the short way rather, sorry. At least I think it's the shorter way. Where are you from, buddy Jackaboff? Jacksaboff?
Who are we jacking off?
Where are you from? Where are you from, sir?
I'm from, you know, Australia.
A place, born in a hospital, hopefully.
No, generally I was born on a farm.
Born in someone's arm.
No, a farm.
Ah, farm. Yeah, got you. Look, animal farm.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
I was born in a horse trough.
Basically Jesus, are you?
Was Jesus born in a horse trough?
He was born in a manger. Like where horses sleep at night. Like a barn.
Repeat that.
Oh my god.
We've moved, so we're currently here.
Should we I was just going to the markets for a little chicky chick. Oh wait.
Made us at the market.
Well, markets checked, then we go north maybe after we do this pursuit. I wonder what he wants us to do. Pulling up. Could be something at the market, surely. Gonna find anyone? Like, no cars parked there.
Alright, you wrote a report earlier. Let me have a look at it.
Yes. Is this shots fired was the title?
Yeah.
It's just shots fired.
Nah, it's no good.
Oh, am I gonna get fired? Have to rewrite the whole thing?
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's someone speedy.
Get him!
Driving illegally. Can't park there, sir, mate. Can't drive that quickly through to the footpath. What are you doing there?
Just getting my, my script. This country is going down the toilet.
Mate.
Script?
Script?
Yeah, my script. My medical marijuana.
No such thing.
Medical marijuana.
Yeah.
I don't think that's legal, sir.
Seems to be walking away from your traffic stop.
I think he is.
Arrest him. That's failing to stop.
130's at a bloody traffic
You
stop.
failed to stop. You moved.
I'll show you I failed to stop.
Oh shit.
Oh.
You gotta do the cops for this, sir.
Yeah, the person's pursuing. If we have a highway available, that would be great, because I don't know if we're keeping up with him. We might, I don't know. Looks like a pretty fast car. Currently north on a street, and currently north on Basely Ave. Headed towards Burger Shot. Never mind, we've taken a eastbound-ish turn down Conquistor and southbound turn on Meglan Avenue. Currently now, east on Cordis are going along the beach path on, the beach. He stopped and is continuing. Headed back up towards Burger Shot, taking a turn to go through in front of Burger Shot. Going up the, never mind, everybody wave off this to go to the store robbery.
Yeah, just attach this. I'll move off to that. Let's get a little bit more.
As far as I'm concerned, did you get a plate on that vehicle before?
No, I didn't. Shit.
No, we failed to lock it, that's all good though.
Just to pay attention. Could you put a waypoint on this store before us?
I have.
Is that the one 7k's away?
No, it's 2.
Oh, it's not updating in my eyes. Let me do it quickly.
It's the Garage store, if you know where that is.
Galaxy Garage, I do know actually. This thing does not have this speed, but it handles it right. It could have probably held up with that girl.
It's not a bad little car. It's obviously GT, so that's, you know.
This is GD.
Yeah.
Yes, allowed to put, was it the undercover paint job on it as a sergeant?
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha.
I see one DOI.
We smash and grab as well. Is that a different shop?
The highway still available.
We parked this up over here.
What did I miss?
The store robbery and the vehicle is it looks like a Lamborghini. We might need your speed.
Yeah, where are you now?
Yeah, I'm going to take C command. I'm going to get my recruit to take negotiations.
I don't have a phone, so I just yell through the door.
Don't worry, I've got you.
Oh, super.
You just take the phone out and throw it at him.
Which phone do I retrieve? Just the...
Just the throw phone, not the ball.
There's this retrieve throw phone directed area.
Yes. Yeah, that's what you want. So you want phone direct, and then because the area one doesn't work very well.
Gotcha. All right.
And then you'll need to pick up another phone once you throw it to them. And
yep.
Yeah. Oh.
Then you negotiate for it. Do I need to break the window to get it through there?
No, you just throw it through. It'll break the window. You can just throw it through the window.
Alright, stand clear, passing a phone through. That was a nice phone throw.
You'll just be able to manage your phones there, and there should be an option to let another one.
Highway, what's your ETA?
Right, do I just retrieve this phone throw?
So you manage, and then you should just retrieve.
Blanca.
Gotcha.
Then you'll have a phone, and when they take out theirs, you'll be talking directly to them. No matter what you say, they'll hear, so just be careful with that.
Hi, can you hear me?
Confirmed. This is Whittaker for the Melbourne Police Force.
Why did you say that like you're a fucking sheep, Bernard?
I've got a goat cock, I've been told.
Interesting way to, Look, Bernard, we're gonna just make a withdrawal from the ATM in here. Don't worry too much about it. And then we'll be on our way. How does that sound?
Right, what's to stop us from coming in there to stop you from making this withdrawal?
Well, I'll take my gun and I'll put it right between your fucking eyes and pull the trigger. How does that sound, you old fuck?
Alright, so you're making criminal threats, understood, sir. Well, how much time do you guys need in there to be like not shooting us in the head?
I'm thinking it'll be probably about a minute and 15 seconds.
A minute and 15 seconds. Alright.
Right.
Alright, we have a highway here, I believe, ready.
Yeah, hey. And
No,
if
we
you come
don't.
any closer, I'm gonna blow this fucking clerk's head off. Just make sure you tell that fucker standing next to you that.
Alright, so if we come any closer, you're gonna blow the clerk's head off. Is that right, sir?
Aye, correct.
Alright, well, leave Rajesh alone. He's working pretty hard at his job today.
Aye.
Alright.
Sure he is.
They don't
Oh,
get
fuck.
ready to bed.
Look at him, beady eyes.
Locals, just so you know, we don't care about them that much.
Fucking beady eyes. Look.
Yeah. We don't really care about him that much. He's never paid for his life insurance and he keeps refusing to pay taxes, mate. So, look, if you don't give me a bit more tangible stuff, we won't be coming in there to tickle your nutsack.
I've already told you exactly what the tangible stuff is. I'll blow your fucking head off.
Alright. Well, we have a highway here. Do you have any hostages? Other than Rajesh?
Just the clerk. That's
just the clerk.
The only.
Alright. Right, so
we'd love to have more hostages, but I'm sure you understand why we can't, given the certain climate of the city.
We won't go in on them, but like I said, just they don't get any demands.
Yeah, understood.
No strips, no free passage, nothing like that.
Aye.
Yeah, well, look, mate, you're getting no demands out of this Rajesh fella. You got about, what, 40 seconds left, I assume, before you get out of there. Our highway's posted up. I'm going to get this phone hung up, alright?
Aye, copy. You better hang up. I'm getting ready to leave.
Well, you still need to be in contact.
You guys returned it?
You'll need to be in contact with him in case, like, you know, just to communicate when he's ready and when we're ready. And
Oh, sorry, yeah, so I'll wait.
you can just throw it on the ground if you don't want to.
I think he's got rid of it.
Oh, okay. But that's, yeah, you can just throw it.
Just like that?
You should be able to return it, yeah, I think.
And I have to go pick up the one from inside the store, correct?
No, it's all good. Just do this.
Alright, packed up.
Nothing works.
What the fuck?
Up, better go looking for a car.
Ignore me, please.
Don't do anything stupid. Don't do anything stupid.
Wait, this isn't my gun. Where's my gun? There it is. Oh.
Oh, the car's over here, just, you know.
Oh no. I think it's the phone, just quietly.
No,
it's... Coming through, excuse me, coming through, excuse me. Okay, alright, everyone ready?
No, not really, but you're fine.
This is
Lego, we'll clear the store, you stay on the
so
pursuit,
you know.
our car's gone.
Are you guys ready to go?
Can we make a deal for one refuel?
Probably not. It's up to your chasing officer. They're ready to go.
Look, given the circumstance, we had a full tank of fuel, now we no longer have a full tank of fuel.
You'll have to discuss it with that officer. It's not me chasing you, mate. Yeah. Yeah.
We'll just go, eh?
That's it, yeah.
Currently pursued with a 1 times Zen Corno heading south off the street.
This is Police Victoria, we're entering the building.
Is following a...
I should have got my taser out, but anyway.
West on Spanish Avenue.
Clear. Are you right, Rajesh? Did you witness anything you shouldn't have seen? He might have done it.
North up the hill,
Look, yeah, we have this hotline you can call, like the reading writing hotline, to help you get out of this job, sir. All right, thank you.
You say you can't read? That's not nice.
Yes.
Still continuing west.
All right, so we need a V-hail. We reappropriate one of the locals' vehicles, or?
And we're taking a
yes,
westbound turn on Picture Perfect Drive.
Hey,
Code 12, catching up.
Southbound turn on Greenwich.
I don't have a lockpick.
In the back alleys here. Now south on Greenwich Place.
Not ideal.
West Eclipse Boulevard, passing the hotel.
Not ideal, chat.
Local medium eyes.
What the fuck? Ay, Dios mío.
South on Mornington Boulevard, taking a west turn on
Ah, yes, beautiful.
Marathon Avenue. VCB, last seen, South Rockford Drive.
We're going to chase him in the local.
Yeah.
Look, there's money in the glove box.
Oh, bonus.
Bonus indeed.
Lost them anyway.
Did they really?
Yeah.
That locals knocked me down. I got stuck beneath the pole.
Last seen South
Yeah, I got
Rockford
local
Drive.
as well, and I'm kind of looking on the back foot and cover.
Probably hated to watch Dutch London Street or the Marina or something.
I'll never expect a local guy to know to be a cop.
Undercover. Oh, ghastly. That's a rare one. Oh, shit.
Fair enough.
I reckon try the moor out near the beach quicker. The hospital see no vehicles. There's the highway.
They did say they're low on fuel, so we should check some fuel stations.
Little Soul. Then there's the Garbo one.
Surprised that highway didn't chase us, to be honest. Nobody knows we're a cop, to be honest.
Yeah, wait, is that Mr. Tate?
Yeah.
Patches leave this call.
Yep. Yeah, nobody here.
Bad little car for a local, to be honest.
Oh! It's definitely, it's like almost an AMG.
Where's the bloody petrol stations up this street or the next one?
It's the next one, yeah. Just there to our right there. Nada.
You win some, you lose some.
No POIs or VOIs.
Mainly
local, trying to detect.
That's alright. If you reckon you could get me to a station so I could possibly cook out this,
Yeah, no worries.
legendary, but no, to say Mr. Whittaker doesn't show up. He shows up.
Regained eyes with
Whittaker's
that
still saying.
Zentorno on Palomino Avenue.
Oh, look at that, we got ice.
Re-engaging shoot.
Yeah, this would be, what, 30 reattaching would be code. What is it for onto your location there, Westy? Oh shit, that's not good.
Location.
Oh fuck, is he easty or is he on the west side of town? That's all I was asking. That's all I was asking. Fucking hell. Definitely just call him that.
Currently on Prosperity Street, heading over the bridges up towards Parsons Burger Shop. Just overshot the jump, and now they're heading towards past Roebuck Garage on San Andreas Avenue towards Little Seoul. They're passing Little Seoul Station now, about to come past Red Car Garage. Going into Red Car Garage.
You make a cheeky right here, I reckon.
Popping out the other side onto Central Car Garage, still continuing. Moving down the rear of Central Car Garage.
Coming our way.
CB,
Yep.
can't even catch up with them. Can't even keep up with them, I should say.
Back in there, Brigadier. Yeah?
Need to get our interceptors tuned up.
I think we're getting chased by an ATV. Just slow down for a moment.
Oh, well, we stopped.
He was there, he is. See, look.
Bullet dive!
That's not a helmet. Hey! That's not a helmet.
Pete, are you still around?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I'm thinking this is the third get away to
You don't have
I
lights.
turned the vehicle
the
off.
highway. That car's pretty quick. Are we able to bring out the interceptor?
Look, you in the Sentinel?
Yeah.
Sentinel doesn't keep up with it, the interceptors won't, they haven't been tuned.
Yeah, okay.
What is that doing, this shaky fucker?
It doesn't look like a police vehicle.
I'm a police officer. You gotta stop the vehicle.
I don't see any flashing lights or anything.
We've got badges and stuff.
That doesn't
Do I tase him?
I'm going for refuel.
Just been struck by a vehicle.
Oh. Sorry, I get in.
Yeah.
I nearly tased him off.
Alright. We should take it back to the station.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, these bloody menaces out in the streets tonight.
Yeah. It's always menaces out on the street. Because I'm always out on the street.
Shouldn't you be catching them then?
No. I'm not very good at that part of the job.
Yeah, I don't catch the criminals, just look at them from a distance.
Exactly. That's what a detective does.
Are you detecting much?
No.
I like to hear it, I like to hear it. So, our interceptor's no good.
The interceptors, yeah, they haven't been, like, worked on by the mechanics properly.
Yeah, gotcha.
The Sentinel is actually faster than every single one of them.
Gotcha. Right, thank you, sir.
No worries, recruit. You're fired. Oh, I've tripped over.
Oh, it's lovely meeting you.
We've met before, I think.
I wouldn't remember.
Not remember, I guess. That's right.
I don't remember anything.
That's the old age.
Oh, sorry, I must have slipped on my trigger finger there. My bad, sir. Sorry about that. Oh!
Jesus, don't die. I should have thought about that, actually. That could kill you.
Oh, my heart, my pacemaker.
Oh, no. Oh, well. You'll be right.
Me. Yeah. Don't hurt me. Alright, thank you, Peter. Have a good night.
You too. Don't die in your sleep. You look like you're around that age that it's probably going to happen. So,
Yeah,
every night could be your last or whatever.
Yes, it could be. I'm on the cusp of death. Been spoofing, what is it, milk powder for 30 years.
Sorry?
Yes, spoof milk powder, pulls smarter white milk. You don't know if you're hungry, eat a Snickers.
What did you just say to me?
Sorry, sir.
Taser addled your brain?
I'm just having flashbacks to watching 7 Prime News. Yeah, DonHulieo is my favourite news artist.
Well, that's good.
Right around the
Only a
corner.
person your age would watch the news, so...
Yeah, someone's got to keep them up, you know what I mean? Keep generating right out of the job. Thank you, Peter.
You have a good sleep. Whatever your name was. Whittaker, that's it.
I take it.
Thank you.
No worries. You're a good
today,
officer, even if you can't run
colour,
properly.
I've never read in my life.
Skyline,
I can tell.
heading north.
Yes, I'm a walker. I need a bloody walking stick.
It's obvious around the waist.
Power Street,
Well, yeah, have a good evening.
Thank you.
under Power
Thank you. Alright, let's get this stream finished up, chat. Jesus Christ. Let's get a raid going maybe tonight, eh? Let's have a little look at the raid browser. I looked at Westicker's live, but he's not. He's chilling.
Way,
He's chilling.
south on Alta Street.
Do we hit a raid finder? Oh, he's chill. Who's live now at the minute? I did check who was live. Any suggestions we should rate? Chuck them in the chat now.
Still continuing.
Mute up the steps so you can't hear it. Yeah, you got track number 7, Pepe, KJ Assassin, Super Flaps, playing Milk. Oh, you got it from the raid browser?
Southwest on Innocence Boulevard. Heading past Megamore.
Do a bit of Zephyr or something, eh? Zephyr maybe? I don't know who to raid.
He tucked somewhere, I don't know where he went.
Probably Zephyr. Let's do it. LeBom, L Trex, I gotta follow them, buddy.
What were we chasing?
Orange GTR looking thing.
We do it. You actually raid this channel.
Scour the area.
Let's just do a bit of crim on Zephyr RP. We'll do that. That sounds like a go.
car's useless. Can't even keep up.
Let's do that. LeBom. But thank you guys all for tuning in to stream. We're going live again from 7 PM tomorrow night with a bit more GDRP most likely. Be doing Julio, or not Marcus Hugadores, not Julio Hugadores. With a bit of crim on the Federal Few MC. If you guys are subs here, make sure you guys use the DonHul raid, DonHul hype, and DonHul high emote, just like so. Yeah, give it a little spam if you feel like doing so. Thank you guys all for cruising into this stream. Oh wow, and if it starts popping off as like an ATM robbery and shit right now. Are you kidding me? You're kidding me, right? Should cancel it. No, it's terrible timing because I need to go chill to Tuesday and normally stream. But if you guys are doing anything else for us Tuesday night, maybe have a good one. Alright. And I'll see you guys after your Wednesdays at work or at school. Okay. So make sure you keep back, enjoy. And yeah, I'll see you next one. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, chat, as always, fuck Kelly Holiday. I don't know why I keep saying that. I think it's funny. Alright. Love you guys. Bye bye now. Enjoy.